let's take a look at the OTA. Some surprises today that we weren't expecting. We have a bevy of balance changes in a diverse set of directions today. While the metagame has overall been fairly healthy, we've seen a little too much strength isolated in a small number of decks, so we're shaking things up a bit to provide some opportunity for decks on the fringe to see more play. First up, Arishem. He's gone from 7/7 at the start of the game, +1 max energy, shuffle 12 random cards into your deck, to still a 7/7. Still at the start of the game, +1 max energy. But now he shuffles 15 random cards into your deck, so 3 extra cards. The judge to his peers, Arishem has certainly presided over Snap for the last month. The play rate on release was unprecedented in the game's history, and we're happy to see a card we aim to be fun and strong clearly hit for so many players. We gave Arishem some time to see how things would settle and whether Cassandra Nova would impact his performance, and things did even out a little bit. However, the play rate is still a bit higher than we'd like for any particular archetype, even given the inherent randomness of Arishem, so we're taking a step to reduce how often the deck can access its strongest cards like Loki and Blob, and better challenge players to improvise with the cards Arishem generates. So yes, while an extra 3 cards in the deck will provide an extra bit of randomness, it's still only 3 cards. I don't think that's going to be enough. The problem really isn't the random cards. The problem is the +1 max energy just for having this card in your deck. You put this card in your deck, you get +1 max energy a turn without having to do anything else, which means you play ahead of curve the entire game. You play ahead of your opponent the entire game. Unless your opponent gets perfect curve draw themselves, they just can't keep up. There's no way for them to keep up. This is the problem with Arishem. I still think that this needs to be more. I still think this needs to be 18, perhaps 20. It'll remain to be seen, but I can see Arishem players still drawing Loki and Blob as often as they did even with 15 cards in the deck. Especially if they're utilizing other cards that give them extra card draw. You know. And again, they're still going to be playing ahead of curve every round. And you're just going to struggle to keep up with them. That's the problem with Arishem decks. So I guess we'll have to wait and see, but I really don't think this is going to be enough. I honestly don't think that's enough. Speaking of Cassandra, she got nerfed from a 3/1 to a 3/0. And yeah, speaking of Cassandra Nova, we loved seeing how many of you enjoyed Deadpool's Diner. It was a fun way to tie in with an awesome movie, and we were excited to debut Cassandra in a totally new way. In fact, that debut led to Cassandra becoming the most played card in the game for a week among multiple player groups we analysed for balance. That's right, more than Shang-Chi. However, unlike Shang-Chi, Cassandra's play rate accompanied one of the highest win rate and cube rates in the game as well, and that's a combination of factors that would be inappropriate to let stand for too long. This was the latest we could make a change to impact Young Avengers season, so we're tuning the card down a touch now to ensure a more robust metagame can develop. Don't really think reducing Cassandra down to a 0 is going to matter now that Arishem decks have an extra 3 cards, so that's an extra 3 power for Cassandra. So it's a net +2 for Cassandra if you're playing against an Arishem. So I really don't think it's going to be that much of a difference at all. All right, Mindstone. Mindstone's gone back to a 1/1. Other than Arishem, Thanos was another archetype heavily impacted by Cassandra Nova. We've been happy with the new Thanos-centric design of the stones, and we're ready to start returning strength to it in the wake of Mockingbird moving to 6 cost. Welcome back to 1 cost, Mindstone. So that's actually really cool. Bringing Mindstone back to 1 cost means Mindstone gets protected by Kyera. It gets buffed by Marvel Boy, along with all the other stones as well. Yeah, I'm keen to give it a bash and see whether this makes any meaningful difference to a Thanos deck. Athena cops a nerf from a 2/1 to a 2/0. The existing and already powerful Angela shells quickly incorporated Athena and have remained strong ever since. In fact, while Arishem was perceived to be the best deck for many weeks, Athena was often the best card in the actual best deck during this time. So we're making a small tweak to bring the 2-cost powerhouse more in line with an appropriate amount of power for the cost. Athena is not a nerf. A drop in power is absolutely a nerf. Speaking of nerfs, Sandman from a 5/7 to a 5/6. As often happens, the rise in prominence of the Angela shell led to a surge in Sandman recently. While that's generally expected and fine, this was the first time it had really happened with the new and improved Big Sandy. To our surprise, these multiplayer Angela decks weren't even among the best matchups for Sandman decks, and it has maintained a very robust presence in the metagame ever since, with few vulnerabilities. We're never targeting Sandman to be a key player in the number 1 deck, so this nerf is something of a slap on the wrist to make the deck's strongest draws more beatable. So there you go. Lady Deathstrike has gotten a buff, 5/6 to 5/7. Another way we're grinding the edges off Sandman is by sharpening an analogous option. Lady Deathstrike can also be a reasonable way to attack swarm strategies without restricting their ability to actually play the game. So we're returning some power here to create more competition among the options for these 5-cost control slots in decks. Now this is awesome because, as you guys know, as you regulars know, I have really enjoyed playing Lady Deathstrike. I think she's one of the best cards in game. I've often played her in my Destroy decks. She's a great counter to Blue Marvel. She's a great counter to Iron Man. She's a great counter to Clog. And now they're giving her an extra +1 power. Awesome. Thank you. I've been playing her for ages, and I will keep playing her now, especially at 5/7. That's really cool. Speaking of buffs, Man-Thing, 4/5 to a 4/7. Big buff here. A similar case can be made for Man-Thing. This card has languished as a fringe option for most of its life, but we think now might be an ideal time to give it a shot at becoming a meaningful player within the metagame. It's a reasonable counter to lean on against decks like Silver Surfer as well as Angela, and the 4-cost slot is often hard to fill for decks wanting some strong but simple role players. And with the resurgence of Zoo, thanks to Marvel Boy, a 4/7 Man-Thing, you just chuck that in your deck. Yeah, you just throw that in your deck, and it doesn't matter what deck it is, you just chuck Man-Thing in your deck now. Because any Zoo decks you come up against, you've got a 4/7, potentially 4/9, 4/11, 4/13, 4/15 if they fill lanes. Like, it can be a 4/15 technically. That's crazy. Another nerf, Nocturne, from a 3/5 to a 3/4. Now this saddens me because, for anyone that isn't aware, in Marvel Comics lore, Nocturne is the daughter of Nightcrawler and the Scarlet Witch from an alternate reality, right? Not the mainstream Marvel reality. This is an alternate future. She's the daughter of Nightcrawler and Scarlet Witch. And so in Snap, they not only combined Scarlet Witch and Nightcrawler's abilities for her ability, but they combined the cost and power of the Nightcrawler and Scarlet Witch cards for Nocturne, which came out to be 3/5. But now with the nerf, that's no longer the case. She's no longer a perfect amalgam of Nightcrawler and Scarlet Witch. Little disappointing, but understandable given Nocturne's prevalence. We gave Nocturne a lot of rope, but in the end, we needed to make a change to preserve healthy competition among the 3-cost cards in the game. Nocturne was just becoming the default best card in too many decks, and warping the strength we started to position other cards at in future seasons. There's also something to be said for preserving the way location variance impacts the game here, as Nocturne could throw some real curveballs. Yes, and you've experienced a few of those curveballs. And we finish on a buff of a card that no one would have had on their bingo card for this week's OTA. Angel. He's gone from a 1/2 to a 2/3. Last but not least, we're trying a little tweak to Angel. We're not sure how much this will move the needle. It might even be considered a nerf for a small number of decks aiming to use Killmonger to get an extra destroyed card for death. But what's becoming clear is that the 1/2 Angel isn't cutting it for competitive decks, so we're making this small adjustment to observe the impact and potentially inform a later change. Now, if they are to do a later change, what I would love to see them do is initially Angel keeps this ability. When one of your cards is destroyed, this flies out of your hand or deck to replace it. But if you then destroy Angel himself, he gets replaced by a stronger Archangel card. Because, as you know from the lore, Angel can transform into Archangel with metallic wings, with razor-sharp feathers, with a paralyzing neurotoxin on them. And it's much more cooler looking than regular old Flappy Boy here. So I've wanted to see them do that Angel to Archangel change forever. I do hope that, and yeah, I can't see this meaning many people will play him. I do want to try him in a destroy deck at this point, just to see. Because, you know, you don't know until you try. So I'm keen to give him a go in a destroy deck and see how well it goes. That's all for this week. Until next time, happy snapping. So, there we go. Some interesting changes. Like I said, I don't think the Arishem nerf is going to be enough. I don't think this shuffling 15 random cards into your deck is going to be enough. But I guess, again, we just have to wait and see. I don't think this Cassandra nerf's going to do much because now Arishem, she gets an extra +3 from that. So it's a net +2 instead of a -1 when you're versing an Arishem deck. The Mindstone change, keen for this. I don't think the Thena change will do much. I don't think the Sandman change will do much. I love the Deathstrike change because I already liked Deathstrike before this anyway. The Man-Thing change is nuts. The Nocturne changed, sad to see, but I feel it might be necessary. And the Angel change, I guess we'll just have to wait and see.